started in 1905. And we are talking about Johannesburg, the discovery of gold in 1868. And the overpopulation in Johannesburg, and then people that were moved to Soweto. What does it stand for? Southwestern Township. But for people in Soweto, they are saying Soweto from here. So that was the beginning of Soweto in 1905. We are talking about a population of minus or plus 5 million people that lives around here. And we are talking about 32 townships, and it is the township of contrast. So we'll be able to take you to the other places so that you'll be able to see what is happening. There is 11 official languages that are here in Soweto. People in Soweto, they are very diverse when you're looking at culturally, the language, the food and everything, but they're able to live together amicably. Welcome to Bara Taxi Rank. This is one of the biggest rank in Soweto. And we've got 3 modes of transport. One of the transport is taxis. Some people, they are calling it minibuses. And it's one of the mode of transport that was able to assist people a long time ago. It's one of the mode of the transport that is able to transport people from Soweto to work and come and work to home. And when people, they want to go for shopping. And then we've got trains which are very slow and inefficient, and we've got buses which are in between. And the taxis, they might be a bit dangerous, but what can we say? You need to go to work. There are different signs that people are using from Soweto when they are going to other places. If you're going locally, you need to point up. If you're going to town, you need to point up. And then if you're going to Orange Farm, you might point with your O. And if you're going to Orlando, you might change the sign so that people will be able to see where you're going. And then we've got houses. The story of the houses in Soweto is that you needed to own the house at least for 99 years. So people before the democratic government, they were not able to own their houses. So you were given a house and the government will tell you that you need to at least own it for 99 years. But what was unfair is that if my grandfather owned the house for 70 years and he passed away, it means that my father will need to start from 1. So that was showing that you'll never be able to own a house. So that's how it worked. And after the 1994 elections, the democratic government, then people were able to own their houses and they were able to rebuild those houses. Because even women who were married and the husband who passed away, that house will be taken away, it will be given to a family. That's why you've got about 3 generations in the same house. So that's the history of the houses here in Soweto. The towers, they were built before the Second World War. But during the Second World War, they had to stop building the towers. And after the Second World War, they continue building the towers. The towers, they were relieving the pressure of not having electricity in the Johannesburg area. The irony of that is that the towers were built in Soweto, but the Soweto was still in the dark at that time. So during the apartheid government, South Africa went under sanction because of apartheid. So they had to learn to create their own resources. And one way of creating electricity was using water and coal, and they needed the coolants in between. So the coolants was for that purpose. But in 1998, again, they realized that this station was getting smaller and smaller because now it was supplying even the township of Soweto and the other townships. So they needed a bigger station. That's why there was a shutdown. In the pipeline, there was a vision and a mission that it will be turned into a business space and entertainment space. So that's why you see on the right tower, Vodacom is one of the networks that we had in South Africa. They brought in the education system and what we are using when we are talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution. And on the other side, the Soweto Gold was able to capture the everyday life of Soweto, the style, hairstyle, the fashion, the mode of transport, and everything is in this tower. But when you're a junkie and you've got an adrenaline junk, this is the space where you'll be able to come and do the bungee jumping. Now we are using this space for bungee jumping. I prefer my feet on the ground and my heart being still. I don't prefer to be turned upside down, but you are welcome to come and do bungee jumping. This is the space where we are doing it. And this is one of the significant part of Soweto, which is Orlando Town. Welcome to FNB Stadium, also known as Soccer City. In other countries, they call soccer as football. Let us look at the history during the apartheid of soccer in South Africa. So most young people, that was one of the sports that they were engaged in, which was expensive and which keep them occupied. And it was one of the sports that even during the emergency of the apartheid, people were able to come together and play sports, which was soccer. Soccer City was built in 1989 and they were only able to finish it in 1992. What is the significance of the stadium? Nelson Mandela, when he was released from prison, this is the first stop that he made to address people in 1992. Secondly is that it is a home to one of the big soccer teams, which is called Amakhosi, Kaizer Chiefs. And one of the rugby team, it's their home here. When it's full capacity, people are seated, it's able to take 80,000 people. And when the others are sitting, it's 120,000 people. This stadium was built in 1987 and it was opened in 1992, and it cost about 3 billion to build the stadium. It's a stadium that is very close to people from Soweto, that some of the people from the township, Deep Kloof and the other areas, they are able to walk to come to this space. And it's one of the stadium where you're able to hold your derby, where the biggest teams of Soweto, they are clashing as the Titans here in FNB Stadium. And this is Deep Kloof Hostel in front of us. Let us look at the history of the hostels. It's a men's hostel, and it was built during the apartheid government. I know that in other countries, the hostel is a place where you can actually go in and maybe sleep over for a night as a visitor or as a stranger or someone who's familiar with the place. But here in South Africa, it's a different concept. So the history of hostels, men were living in the rural areas, and their world at that time lies in the land and farming. So the apartheid government was thinking of a strategy of how to bring cheap labor into the city. And the way that they brought that was introducing the tax law. If you own any livestock, you were supposed to pay tax for them. And if you are a man, you were paying £1 for just being a man. So that was one strategy of moving men from the rural areas to come into the city. So in the city, some of these men, they were working in the market, and some of them, they were working in the shops, and some of them, they were working in the gold mines. So what happened was that early in the 80s, young people in the township, they were starting to retaliate the white government. And they came with a strategy of staying away from work and from school. They had to come to this man and ask them to join their stay away from work and from school. But for this man, it was very difficult. Remember, for them, they came to work to pay their taxes. And for them, they came to work for their families. And lastly, they were the authority from their families. So they've never been used to being told by young people what to do. Lastly, they were called the country bumpkins because they were coming from the rural areas. So it was difficult for them to accept that with young people. And there was the clash of black and black violence that started in Soweto and the other parts of South Africa. But when you're looking at the conditions that these people were living in, it was a very inhuman condition. You'll find that in one space, you'll find about 20 men that were sharing the space. So there was no human dignity that was introduced at that space. So they were bitter, they were angry, they were resenting. And some of the families, they were broken at that time. Because the men, they were not able to go home now and then. Some of them, they were only able to go once home, and some of them, they were able to go twice a year if they were lucky. Some of them, they ended up finding other wives at home, and they forget about the children at home. There was no proper sanitation, there was no electricity. And let us look at today. Today, we've got the multicolored apartments. That was the upgrade, because during the Nelson Mandela term, he was able to look at what makes this man so bitter and angry that there is a black on black violence, as much as there was a perception that there was a third hand that was involved, that was supplying weapons to this man in the hostel. And this man, remember, when they were fighting for themselves. But young people, they had to protect their families when there was that clash. Nelson Mandela realized that this men, they were living in a very inhuman condition. Women were not allowed to come in. Female children were not allowed to come in. And he said this is his last legacy. The government needs to rebuild the houses that will be very human and restore the dignity. That's why we see the multicolored apartments. But still we are talking about the issues of unemployment. We are talking about 80% of unemployment in this space. This house was built in 1947, and this is the same house where Nelson Mandela and his wife Evelyn lived here for years until Nelson Mandela was arrested in 1964. The house burnt down afterwards, and the community were able to rebuild the house. Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, came back in this house and was able to live for 11 days. When you go into the house, you're able to see that it was a matchbox house, as we always refer it to the old 4 rooms. And you can see there was 2 bedrooms, the bigger one for the parents and the smaller one for the children. And you'll find that the bathroom is always outside, and there is a kitchen and there is a lounge. So when you go inside, you're able to see the heritage of Nelson Mandela, that he was coming from the lineage of the kings in Eastern Cape. It was turned into a museum, and still it is a museum. You are able to come and visit and be able to see what went through this house. Because afterwards, Winnie Mandela was harassed by police now and then after Nelson Mandela was arrested, until she went to Free State and lived in that space until Nelson Mandela was released. But she had a new house here in Orlando West. That's the history of Nelson Mandela Vilakazi Street. This is the museum that is capturing the events of 1976, of what happened in 1976. It is named after Hector Peterson, who was the second child that was shot in 1976. As the first one, it was Hastings Zovu, which we don't have a picture of him, built up to the events of 1976. So what happened is that there was education in South Africa that was called Bantu education, which was only catering for black people. That means that black people were supposed to learn in English. But then the government changed the whole story and said that they were going to learn in Afrikaans, which was a challenge for everyone, because even the teachers, they didn't know what was going to happen. Imagine, learning Afrikaans in mathematics in Afrikaans. So that was an issue for most young people. But it meant that the teachers were going to go back to the training colleges and be trained to teach in Afrikaans, so that they're able to teach children at school. So they came together, the students' movements, they came from the different schools, and they were able to talk about it, to say, what can we do? They list their grievances, and they wanted to meet in one point where they were going to go to the Department of Education of that time and present their grievances. So children, school children were going to come from all 4 corners of Soweto, and they were going to meet. So on that day, they came and they met. Hector Peterson and the others, which were younger, they were not supposed to be part of that march. But as they were seeing their siblings marching and walking and singing the songs and carrying the placards, then they joined the movement. Nobody knows what happened. The only thing that they can remember, the school children, was a warning that they need to disperse. But who gave the order to actually shoot them? There is no one who can remember that. They were unarmed. They were only carrying the dustbin lids, and they were shot with live ammunition. Hector Peterson died in the near clinic here, which is called Mandela Sisulu Clinic, where he was declared that he's gone. When you're looking at the pictures that we have right here in the museum, there is a picture on the right. It has Mbuyisa Makubu. Mbuyisa Makubu went to exile after the uprising of 1976, and nobody knew what happened to him. The lady who's running just near Mbuyisa Makubu is Antoinette Sitole, who is a sister to Hector Peterson. And when you're looking at the surrounding of the museum, it carries the significance of 1976. When you go in, you're able to see the names of the children that were shot, and some of them it's marked unknown because they didn't know what was their names. So here behind us, we've got the pillars, which has the spaces. That is saying that there's unfinished business or untold stories of 1976. And when you're looking at the water, it's showing the tears of the parents that they shed and the pain when their children were shot on that day. And the stone, it shows that it was the only defense mechanism that the children they had on that day when they were shot with live ammunition. And the trees are the olive trees, which is showing peace at that time. So this museum is sort of connected to Vilakazi Street, where every history is important for us as people of South Africa and people of Soweto.
So Kliptown is one of the most important communities that we are having in the country, because The Freedom Charter document was adopted here in 1955. So the Freedom Charter document today is a document that forms the 10 backbone laws that inspired us to have a constitution as South Africans. So the document was written on the 25th and on 26th of June 1955. 1956, the document was banned and rejected by the apartheid government. The document was only being passed in 1996 by Nelson Mandela to make it the 10 backbone laws that inspire us to have a constitution as South Africans. So law number 1 starts by saying the people shall govern. Law number 2 says all national groups shall have equal rights. Law number 3 says the people shall share the country's wealth. Number 4 says the land shall be shared amongst who are great. Number 5 it says all shall be equal before the law. Number 6, all shall enjoy equal human rights. Number 7, there shall be work and security. Number 8, the doors of learning and culture shall be open. Number 9, there shall be houses, security and comfort. Number 10, there shall be peace and friendship. So the Freedom Charter document, it is a document that is rated one of the best constitutions in the whole entire world because it tells you what you should give to your own people.
Welcome to Regina Mundi Church. In Latin, it's called Regina Mundi, but in English is Queen of the World. This is a Catholic church. This is one of the churches that was able to open its doors for people to actually come and gather and be able to talk about the issues that they were facing during apartheid. In 1976, after the uprising, some people, they ran from the police into the church, and the police, they followed them in the church. Fortunately, no one was injured, but we can still even see today the bullet holes where they were shooting and the furniture that was broken and all of those things that were happening in the house of God. Affectionately, it is called the People's Church because it's opening doors to gatherings where people, they were talking about political issues, but even people, when there were funerals and stuff, they were able to come into this church. They've got a painting of it's just showing Maria, and it shows the child of Soweto being carried by Maria. And there is a lot of artifacts that were donated to the church that it made it possible for them to be able to fundraise. It's a lovely place to come and see. It's still a gathering for most people. Some of the funerals, they're still here. Politically, people, they still connect to Regina Mundi Church. And there was a time when Nelson Mandela declared the day as a Regina Mundi Day.